Hi, this is Cathy Goodwin. And if you're on this video, then you may have several reasons for being here. Maybe you're thinking about working with me as a coach or consultant, or maybe you're just curious about how I work and what I do, or maybe you just want to get to know more about what's available out there when you have career questions. So what I've done is put together the most common, frequent questions that I get when people want to work with me. It takes a lot of time to go through this if we sit down on a phone call and really I try to answer all your questions. So I can give you more complete answers this way and think of things you may not have thought to ask. Well, the object is to give you the very best resource possible for your own particular situation. So first, what is coaching? Okay, coaching is first and foremost an opportunity to have access to a sounding board. What that means is that when you talk to me, I reflect back what you say. We go over your questions, and when you present your questions, when you plan your conversation with me, which is like I always ask, tell me your story, tell me about yourself. You start framing your thoughts in your own mind, often in a new way. And a lot of times just planning for that conversation will give you inspiration and ideas for your next career moves. Or you might get ideas to solve whatever question or challenge is facing you just from planning our conversation and from hearing yourself say the words out loud. You'll be talking to someone who is outside the situation, not your mom and not your spouse or your best friend. And that also gives you a different way of framing your story. You get experience and objectivity. I've been doing this a while. I've been quoted by reporters in Money Magazine and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So I've talked to a lot of different people, heard a lot of different stories with people in different fields as corporate executives, business owners, and self-employed professionals. So I do bring experience and can tell you what other people have done in your situation. I'm also extremely objective. I have no skin in the game. We probably live in different time zones. We probably will never meet in person. So I can be totally objective and honest and realistic about whatever you are facing. And that's really important compared to talking to someone who knows you and who really cares about the outcome because it's going to affect them personally. We come up with a plan of action. This is where coaching or consulting differs from what many people call counseling, because a lot of times, and this is not always the case, terms have blurred today. So what people call themselves counselors when they act more like coaches. And I've heard about people who are licensed counselors who say, well, if someone wants me to be a coach, I'll be a coach. And if someone wants me to be a counselor, I'll be a counselor. And I do the same thing either way. So that's pretty much the state of affairs in the contemporary arena of consulting and coaching. But what I think is the big difference is that we think about action. We don't say, okay, well, let's talk about why this happened or how it happened, except in terms of what will make a difference in your next steps. That's what we focus on, what you can do to change your situation, not why, maybe it relates to something in your past. Although you may think about it yourself, it may come up, but that's not my area of expertise. So types of coaching that I offer, and you'll find many coaches offering similar types of coaching, are laser coaching. This is very rare. If I offer a class or a teleseminar and I invite you to come on the call live and talk about yourself, you'll get 2, 3, 4, even maybe 5 minutes of laser coaching that's on the spot, quick solutions, suggestions, tips, ideas. It's sometimes extremely helpful, and sometimes it just gives you a starting point. What is most common for me and for many people today is power hour coaching, because people don't want to sign up for longer terms anymore. They don't want to commit for months and months. What that means is that you make a call. Usually it lasts 60 to 90 minutes. We record the call, so you have an MP3 file you can download and listen to later on your iPod, and I take care of the recording for you. You don't just get the time with me, because before the call, I will spend time going over any material you send me. If you want to send your resume, your notes you've made about yourself, your last performance review, any ideas you have, send everything to me at least 24 hours ahead of time, and I guarantee that I'll read it. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. You can also get longer term coaching. What that means is we agree to meet 2 to 3 times a month on a regular basis. Maybe 3 o'clock on Thursdays will be your time, guaranteed to you, 2 to 3 times a month, and we'll talk about whatever you want. And usually those sessions are 40, 45 minutes. So for some people, that is extremely valuable. If you're making a long career change and it's going to take 6 months to a year, and you want somebody you can talk to throughout the process for continuity, someone on your side who will be there, who knows your situation, so you don't have to explain things over and over again, that's an ideal arrangement. You can also do things like book power hours in batches, so you get a discount when you do that. So you can buy 3 or 4 of them, and you have to use them up in a certain amount of time or they disappear. So, and that really encourages you to make that commitment, take advantage of the opportunity, and get your questions answered. This works if you want to talk, say, once a month for the next 3 months. That's a really good solution for many people. So a lot depends on how you think. I mean, do you like to talk to people in brief chunks of 30 to 45 minutes, or do you like to bundle everything up together? Either way, I recommend starting with that power hour or strategy session type coaching. E-coaching is extremely popular also, because what that means is you have total flexibility. So in a few minutes, we're going to look at how you're going to schedule time in your own busy life for coaching. And this is a good way to get around time constraints and space constraints. What that means is send me an email 4 or 5 days a week and ask a question. You can be as long or as short as you want. Generally, I recommend keeping each email to one question, because that really forces you to focus on one key point, and it keeps the situation manageable. So I'm not writing you a novel every day, but and you don't have time to read that much every day anyway. So most people don't. So what you do is you simply sit down and write something, and I answer it. This is very, very flexible. It also has a lot of value because I can schedule around my own commitments and get your answer back within 1 business day, 24 hours. And that way I could offer a really good rate for this that I could not offer if I had to be on the phone and move my time around to do that, because I can answer a question in between other things I do. So you get a really good value, usually a good deal for that, if you're the kind of person who can work with that. If you're going to choose e-coaching, definitely start with the power hour coaching or strategy session, because that will be really critical to your success if I get a chance to know you before we start. And Power Hour, by the way, my own version is the strategy session, which we'll look at in a minute. You could also do something called an intensive that some coaches offer and some don't. Let's say that you want to really work on your career. Maybe you've got to change jobs within 6 months, and you want to get a whole bunch of stuff out of the way. You want someone to look at your resume, your cover letter, your opportunities, and do it all in one half day or day session. We can certainly do that. You can come to Philadelphia for a half day or whole day session. I'll book a conference room at one of the centers I work with. We can just take the time to do everything. We'll bring our laptops and get everything done. And I'll even take you out to lunch before or after the session, and or the middle if it's a whole day, and you get to stay in beautiful Philadelphia. If you're on the East Coast within an easy train ride, that's often feasible for me to come to you. Or if you're in another part of the world, it often gets prohibitive because of the logistics involved, but sometimes it can be arranged. So if you're the kind of person who says, okay, I want to really devote some time to my career in one single session, hey, we can do that. So when do you have time for coaching? This is something that comes up a lot. I work weekdays. I rarely work weekends because I have other things I do on the weekends. However, we can sometimes, if you've been with me a long time, we can make special arrangements. Usually I work 10 to 4 Eastern, because that's the time I can absolutely be sure I'm there. I can sometimes work other times, but generally, if you want a regular call, this is safe. I do work Saturday mornings, but that is an extra charge. If you've been with me a long time and you're a regular client now, we've had multiple sessions, then sometimes we work around this. But for most people, and again, a lot depends on my time. If I'm really busy, that just doesn't happen, or there is an extra charge. And the extra charge is simply because I do certain things on Saturday morning, and I have to pay someone to do them if I don't. So I pass the cost along if you want me to be there. So if you can't make those times, I recommend thinking about ways to clear your calendar, and you may want to talk to an organization coach or me about how you can do that. I want to point out that you can also go to a coach in another time zone. Let's say you live on the East Coast and the only time available to you is 7 a.m. Then you can talk to a coach in England where that's evening, they're probably still working. Or if the only time available is, say, 5 o'clock in the evening, then a coach on the West Coast is probably still working because it's only 2 o'clock there. That certainly is an option. But there's longer term questions that I'd invite you to consider, because let's say you just can't get away during the day. You're in an open cubicle, everyone can see you, you have to put in FaceTime, and you don't have access to a phone. Then I would strongly recommend that you think about how you're going to make any kind of a change. Any kind of career change is going to involve talking to people, a lot of times face-to-face meetings, interviews, certainly phone calls. You can do so much on the internet, but only so much. So you have to think about how this is going to work for you in the longer term. And by the way, I would also recommend that you have with you your own personal cell phone. Use your own personal email account, either Yahoo, or I recommend Gmail as the best one. It's pretty secure. Have your own account that your company does not have access to and cannot have access to. Same with the phone. Have something that is your personal private phone that is not your company's cell phone. Getting started with an introductory call is, a lot of people ask for that, like, can we chat? And sometimes that makes sense, but I have to tell you that almost all the time these calls turn out to be really a waste of time and not very helpful. The reason is that coaches are trained to use introductory calls as sales calls. That really, you have 15-20 minutes. That's usually all most people can give you in an introductory call. It's not a lot of time to get to know your situation and not a lot of time to get to know you. We would not have time to go through all this material on an introductory call. I have tons of videos, tons of information in my blog that you can go through. You can get a really strong sense of who I am and how I think about things, and you can look at testimonials. So an introductory call really a lot is useful if you work with clients, or if you are a client who wants long-term, high-end consulting. And if you do that, you're committing to a long period of time on the basis of a fairly short call. I used to do this, but I found that's really not helpful for either of us, because people would say, I'm really interested in a long-term commitment, and then as we started working, they realized they wanted something different. So I recommend skipping this. Go right to a strategy session. Believe me, you'll have as much information to make your decision about this investment as if we got on the phone for 15 minutes. I'm telling you now what I tell you on the call. If you're in a field that's really rare, or you think you have an particularly unusual career situation, if you email me or you go through my blog, you'll get an idea of, usually by email or by looking at my blog, you can tell if I'm going to be able to figure out what's going on and be resourceful to you during your call. Strategy session, as I said, is 60 to 90 minutes, and we work on real questions. There's no sales. We just talk about you and your situation, so you get a sense of what's going on. What I have found is that with free calls, the dynamic shifts as soon as you go to paying calls. I once myself was hiring a consultant for a marketing project, and we had a free call that went on. It was quite a long call. And as soon as we got on the paid call, everything shifted. All her suggestions shifted from everything she'd said on the free call. And it was like, whoa, what's going on here? And that happens a lot. So I recommend starting right away and not wasting time. The only way you really know what you're going to get is to sign up for a session. And it's often enough for the next 3 months of activity, because you walk away with a plan. You don't need to keep coming back. But you may want to keep coming back through one of my other programs. And you can pay with PayPal. It may be tax deductible. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax expert, so talk to your own accountant when you do that. If money is tight and you're really, really stretched, then I recommend holding off on coaching, because it's going to be hard to get any benefit if you're really feeling resentful or nervous about having to pay the money, because you have to really be relaxed. I mean, work on situations where you really want to think about things in a meaningful way. Now, if you are in a crisis situation and you have say a bad performance review, you need to do something now, a lot of times we can help. And in that case, you want to think about the cost of investing in a call with me versus the alternatives that you have. So what do you do before the call? Well, you assemble your resume and any notes you have. Send everything 24 hours ahead of time. I promise I'll read everything you send. If you send 24 hours or one business day. If it's a Friday and we're talking Monday, try to get everything into me on Friday because I may not get a chance to see it on Sunday night. And cancel at least one business day before the call. Now, if you want to send me something at the last minute, I'll do my best to read it, or I might have to read it during our call time, but I will guarantee I'll be on top of everything you send 24 hours ahead of time. Cancellations becoming pretty common these days, so that's nothing unusual. So what kind of results can you expect? I get this all the time. First of all, everyone is different, so your results won't be like anyone else's. But here are some things people have said to me as we finish our call, or as they get back to me with a message the next day or two. I feel so much more comfortable. It's like a weight dropped away. I've had people say things like, I haven't slept for the last 3 weeks, and last night I slept after our call. That makes me feel so good. I just, you have no idea. Then people say things like, I'm so glad we talked. Things worked out better than expected. Comments like this are from situations like a crisis. For example, I get a number of calls from people who are facing performance reviews that were more negative than they expected. So a lot of times they'll say, well, I've got to quit. I mean, this is just not tenable. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no future. And when we talk, they realize that in some cases they have opportunities within the company. And I've had a few calls and emails following up from people who said, I got a better job within the company. I am so much happier. And I would not have thought of the strategy if we had not had this conversation. A frequent comment is, I know exactly what to do next. This is almost always what people say. I know exactly what I need to do. I need to do steps 1, 2, and 3. And they can do them. And I feel much more confident about my future. Things usually happen faster after we have a call. I don't like to guarantee because I'm pretty conservative in what I promise, but almost always people say that they reach their destination faster than they expected, because simply, as I mentioned, the act of reaching out, of framing your question, of saying, okay, it's real, I do have this challenge, I got to do something, that in itself is a huge step in making your next move. So if you want to get started working with me, you can go to my website, midlifecareerstrategy.com. There's a tab there for services that lays out all the services that I offer. And actually, I keep adding and changing. So if you don't see what you want, just send me a message and we'll talk. You can sign up for my e-zine, which comes out pretty much whenever something needs to get sent out, or whenever I get some information I want to share. I don't have, at the moment, things may change by the time you're listening, but I don't send something out every week on a regular basis. So you can go and get information, get updates, hear about free calls, new videos that I'm making when you sign up, and there's sign up right on the right-hand side of the first page there. And then you can book a career session with me just by going to this link and saying, I'm ready. Have in mind 2 to 3 or more dates. If you have an odd time or time constraint, send me an email, because sometimes on an odd basis, I can work around time constraints. Not always, not guaranteed, but sometimes I can. So make a note of these links, click on them. They may be clickable on your screen. And I look forward to working with you if that makes sense, if it's appropriate, and if this is the right time in your own career. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to working with you in the near future.